Welcome, welcome to Rewild Your Business. I'm your host, Jill Mokes, and I am thrilled you are with me this week. If it's your first time stumbling upon this podcast, welcome. And if you're a regular listener, thank you so much. Every single person that listens into this podcast and who takes the time to send me an email or put a review on Apple or wherever, you just don't even understand how much of a difference it makes. I love recording this podcast. And so when I hear from you that you love listening to it, my goodness, it just makes my day. So thank you to everyone who takes that time to let me know. I appreciate you. So what are we talking about this week? I want to talk about entrepreneurial loneliness. This is a phrase that I've used for a while, and it's a little bit cyclical. It comes up in phases, I think, and it's a real tricky one. And I want to dive into why I think this loneliness that we can experience as entrepreneurs, why it happens, because sometimes I think it's almost happens by design. And I want to talk about that and how we can maybe reframe it and start really pulling towards and around us a circle of support. The people who you can go to when you're feeling that stab of, something amazing's just happened and I can tell my partner, but they don't really get it. Or I could tell my friend, but they're definitely not going to get it. That circle of people who really do get it, who are really going to understand why something has you fired up or why something is upsetting for you. So that's what we're going to talk about in this episode, calling in your support circle, because we definitely don't have to do this business thing on our own. In fact, it's not how we're designed to do things. It's not how we're designed to work. And it's funny because I was actually speaking to someone just this week who was saying that they were toying with the idea of going back to the corporate world. And it wasn't because their business isn't working. It was because they missed having that team around them. They missed having that camaraderie. So it's a really interesting one. And that's what we're going to dig into today. So let's dive into the episode. Welcome to Rewild Your Business, the podcast for women doing the work their soul intended. I'm Jill Mokes. I'm an international business coach, and I'm a guide for women doing the work that matters. Rewilding your business means cutting away what doesn't belong to allow what does to thrive, finding simplicity in your work. And it's about bringing the whole of who you are to the table, whether you're building something new or finding your way back to what really matters to you. I'm so glad you're here. So one thing I want to make clear is that entrepreneurial loneliness has nothing to do with being unpopular. It's not about the number of people you have in your audience. And quite often we can experience this loneliness despite having a full inbox, despite having, a ton of WhatsApp groups that we're constantly muting the notifications on, if you're like me. It's not a shortage of people, but it's a shortage of, it's a shortage of a particular kind of presence. I think I read a good metaphor once. It's about having people who are close enough to the coalface to actually understand the weight of what you're carrying and far enough from the outcome that they're not trying to manage the business for you or manage their own feelings about it. And this is where, your partner's probably not going to be the best support person for you in this. They may love you, but they're not necessarily going to understand why something like a drop in engagement on your social media has put you in a bad mood for the afternoon, right? If you're anything like me, you've got family members who still don't really understand what you do and don't really consider that what you do is a real job. That still pisses me off beyond belief. But there you go. They're not the right people to have in that inner circle, that support circle. And I think when it comes to your peers, if you're a coach, other coaches, other founders, people who would actually get it, something has happened to us. And somewhere along the way of our own business building journey, we've started treating everyone who falls into that category as competition. And we get suspicious and we get very protective of our own little empire. We treat it as though there's one pie and everyone's circling it with their own fork. And so we almost go quiet. We get a little bit secretive. We don't really want to share. And then we start isolating ourselves, like I say, really by design, not by accident. But the problem then is with that, we've isolated ourselves from the people who really would get it, the other people who are building businesses the way we are, the people who understand what it feels like to feel isolated. And I can really relate to this. I think I've gone through seasons of doing this in the early days, kind of building everything behind closed doors, keeping everything a secret until I was ready to share it in its finished state. Making every single decision in isolation. So it took me longer than it ever needed to. And that happened because I just didn't let anyone else in. And not because I didn't have access to anyone, but because I didn't ask anyone to be in my support circle. I didn't make it clear what I needed or how I could support them. And therefore, this circle never built around me in those days. It's really changed for me now. I think I have a really solid support circle of women who are building businesses the same as I am. Not all building the same businesses, they're not all coaches even, but certainly women who are like me, think like me, and who I trust to give me opinions, to allow me to share the honest version of how I'm feeling. And that is so special. It's so precious. And I think another thing that plays into us resisting building these kind of supportive relationships with our peers is because there's this very loud message that if you do, then you are outsourcing your power to other people's opinions. Now, I am a very, very strong proponent. You know this about me. You know that I believe it is so important to develop your own inner knowing, your intuition, and to have that as a compass that drives your decisions. I also truly believe that you do not need other people's validation to be able to make decisions for yourself in your business. And I truly believe that no one else can tell you what is true for you. That is absolutely a fact. No one can tell you what's true for you. And honestly, I've built an entire framework for my business around trusting your intuition and allowing that to be the first layer of everything you build on top of that. But I think that message around self-trust has got a bit twisted in the zeitgeist. And it's become something a bit less flexible. So the message has almost become, if you ask for input, you're weak. If you want someone to talk an idea through with, you're not trusting yourself. And this kind of message that real confidence means never needing anyone else. And I just think that's absolute rubbish. And it's a bloody lonely and expensive kind of rubbish, honestly. And I think it's a message that has kept a lot of really brilliant women sitting alone with decisions that could have been made so much more easily, with so much less anxiety, if they just said them out loud first to a really good listener. And I want to be so clear about something now. Needing validation and wanting to think out loud with someone who gets it are not the same thing. Not at all. Validation is when you need someone else to tell you that the decision is right before you'll even believe it for yourself. So it's outsourcing your inner authority. It's not trusting your own read on your own business. So that is validation, needing someone else to tell you that something is right before you can believe it. Whereas thinking out loud with someone who gets it is totally different. You already roughly know what's true, and you're using another person as like a kind of mirror to help that knowing come into focus faster. You're not asking them to decide for you. You're asking them to hold space for you while you decide. And there's a world of difference between those two things. You can trust yourself completely and still enjoy having a sounding board. I know I do, for sure. And actually, do you know what? I think that the women who trust themselves the most are actually the ones who aren't precious about needing that sounding board. Whereas maybe the women whose trust in themselves is a bit shaky, they're the people who tend to either overcorrect into asking everyone everything before making any decision, or overcorrect the other way into asking no one. So the people who are confident and have that self-trust, they just kind of ring a friend and are like, can I just talk something through with you? And when they come off that call after 30 minutes and they have this clarity, it isn't because their friend solved something for them. It's because they said it out loud to someone they trusted. So if you are someone who has got swept up into that message that needing support is a failure of self-trust, I really want you to release that, because that is not true. So when I talk about a support circle, what am I actually talking about? What do I actually mean by that? Because I don't mean a networking group or a mastermind or anything like that. A small number of people who are in your inner circle, who you trust with the unfinished, unperfected, raw version of yourself. Trusting someone with the version of yourself that hasn't quite worked out what she's thinking in its entirety yet. Having someone that you can trust to show that side of you to is incredibly important. Having someone that you can confide in when you're scared that the thing you're about to launch is going to flop, right? You're not looking for them to give you an answer to make sure it doesn't flop. You want to just speak that fear. That is where this trust that it is someone who gets you is so important. I think for me, it's about having people that maybe I'm going to say something that I know is really unreasonable, but I've just got to get it out there. Just got to bloody say it to someone. And I know that the women in my inner circle, my support circle, are going to get it. They're going to know I'm being flippant. They're going to know I don't really mean it, but I'm going to be able to get it off my chest, right? And a support circle like that really needs three things. The first thing it needs is people who share your values. You don't have to do the same thing. You know, in fact, sometimes it's actually better if they don't do the same job as you. Not because of comparison or competition, but that's just not the most important thing. You need them to share your values. So you need people who would understand why you would, for example, turn down something that looks on the outside as really lucrative, but actually to you feels really soul flattening, right? You need someone who's going to understand why that would be your thought process. So for me, I know that respecting and honoring the seasons in my business and having slow seasons that feel spacious for me is so important. And I need the people in my support circle to get that, to agree that slow isn't a dirty word. And I think, you know, people whose definition of success maybe has enough of an overlap with yours so that when you tell them your dream, your goals, your vision, they're not sitting there thinking you're stark raving mad. They're kind of getting it. They're like, yeah, I can really see why that appeals to you. So shared values, really important. So this isn't how we always pick friendships or relationships, but I think for entrepreneurs to have this inner circle, this support circle, it really does need to be with people that share your values, share your way of thinking about things, your ethical standpoints around things. I think that's really important. The second thing that your circle needs is to really prioritize generosity over that protection, that kind of competition mindset. Sometimes you will have been burnt in the past, and this can make it incredibly difficult for you to trust that you can be this open with people. If maybe someone's taken an idea you had and gone and done it themselves, or took credit for something that you did, or was just like a little bit snidey and competitive with you so that it didn't feel like a good friendship. Once that's happened to you, then your instinct can be to protect everything, to kind of close the shutters, say less, assume that everyone's playing this kind of longer game that you can't see, but is there. I really get that instinct, right? But honestly, the problem with that is that it doesn't only keep out the people who would take advantage, it keeps out everyone. It keeps out the people that would have passed you business, made an introduction to someone who is exactly the person that you need at that time. Maybe someone who would have come up with an exact phrase that you needed for your website and you just hadn't been able to land on, and they just generously offer it over to you. It keeps out the people who are willing to be honest with you and tell you if they think you're underselling yourself, or telling you the thing they really know you need to hear. So that's what happens when you are overly protective of your ideas of who you are, of your business in general. And I think, if you can choose wisely and build a support circle around you that is made up of people who share your values and people who have the same level of generosity that you're going to bring to the circle. Generosity around celebrating what's working for each other. Generosity in sharing ideas. And if you're sharing an idea that you really don't want someone to replicate, having trust in those people that all you need to say is, can we keep this one on the download, because I really love this idea and I really want to see it through to fruition without anyone else running with it. An inner circle, a support circle, will allow you to do that. It will have people in it who aren't going to take advantage of your openness. They're going to be as open as you are. Whereas operating from that place of suspicion all the time really costs you so much in terms of support. The third thing, and this is kind of tied, I think, to the last one, is reciprocity that is actually expressed and not just assumed by each other. And so this is like a practical thing, but I think this is quite important. We tend to assume that our inner circle knows how to support us. So we assume that because we know each other well, and we've shared a bit of each other's journey maybe, that we know how to support them and they know how to support us. But actually, that is often not the case. And I think what can be really helpful is, from time to time, to just remind each other by saying it out loud. Here's what I need from you when things are hard for me. And here's what I'm good at giving. You might have someone in your inner circle who's absolutely brilliant at giving you feedback on strategy. And, maybe kind of the person that you would really trust their opinion on an idea you've had in terms of a new offer for your business, right? That same person might be absolutely rubbish at the emotional side of things. She might be the person that just goes silent if there's tears on a call and has no idea how to deal with that, right? So if you have a problem and you're feeling emotional and upset, that's not necessarily going to be the person in your circle you'll reach out to. You're going to reach out to the person who really has made it clear that they're comfortable with that. That's okay. Nothing is off limits in terms of emotion with them. And these aren't limitations on your friendships with this inner circle, right? This is just about getting what you need and giving others what they need. Because sometimes when we don't make it clear what we need, you can end up resenting the gap between what you need and what you're actually given in terms of support. And no one's a mind reader, right? No one's a mind reader. This whole concept of entrepreneurial loneliness, I think, in business it's never about a lack of people. It's often a lack of instructions. You probably already have people around you who would absolutely show up for you if they knew what showing up looked like, if they knew what you would appreciate from them. And yet we never say it because, I don't know, I think some people have that opinion, well, if I have to ask, it doesn't count. You should know. You should just know. And I actually think that in relationships in general, in all relationships, in friendships, in romantic relationships, I think that is one of the biggest red flags in a relationship, is taking that stance of, if you loved me, you'd already know. I wouldn't have to ask you. But none of us are mind readers. Your best friend's not a mind reader. Your husband, wife, not mind readers. Business partner, not a mind reader. We can only respond to what's in front of us. One thing you might want to try is taking a piece of paper and dividing it into two columns. And maybe in the first column, writing down a list of all the ways that you could support the women who you would love to have in your support circle. And try and be as specific as you can. So rather like be a good friend, maybe it's something like, if they ask me for feedback on something, I'm always going to get back to them within 2 days, right? Specific, like this is how I could really support someone. Maybe it's, I will always tell you the truth about your pricing, even when you don't want to hear it. So get specific about what you feel you have the skill to bring to the women in your support circle. So for me, I know that the women in my circle definitely would come to me. And actually, if you are in my inner circle and you're listening to this and you don't think this is true, you better give me that feedback. But I know that the women in my circle are going to come to me if they want the truth about a strategy in their business, for example. I also know that they're going to come to me if they want a very detailed answer, truthful answer. So one of my bugbears is when, you're looking for the answer on something and you can never really get the full, honest, truthful answer online, or, when you're Googling something. I know the women in my circle know that if they WhatsApp me and are like, Jill, how do you manage to, I don't know, I had a conversation like this recently, actually. How do you manage to take a rest during the day every day? Like, how do you work that out? What does your day actually look like? So I'm straight away on the phone saying, right, okay, so I set my alarm for 7, wake up at 7. I then have my tea in bed and I do my meditation, and I'm walking through the whole of my day, because sometimes people want the detailed answer. And I know I bring that to the party. So that's what you could put in your first column. In your second column, write down, how would I like to be supported? And this is actually a bit harder, I think, because you've got to admit what you actually need. And so it might be something like, I need someone who will just listen without trying to fix something. And I need them to listen to me for 10 minutes while I just get out everything I need to say. Or maybe it's, I need someone who's going to remind me constantly of my own evidence, even when I've forgotten, and keep saying that I have no evidence to prove that I can do something, right? Maybe it's, I need someone to congratulate me when I have a win without straight away asking me, okay, what's next on the agenda? So think through these detailed things of what that inner support circle could look like for you. And of course, think about that in conjunction with your values, and then think about, who are the people in your world? And this isn't about sending out a group memo. Hello, I'm looking for a circle of support women. I have a few vacancies, apply here. It's not like that. This is about maybe just having one conversation with one person and saying something like, I realize I've never told you this, but I really appreciate the way you do X, when I need X. And also, I'd really appreciate if you could do Y when I need Y. And maybe it will feel a little bit exposing. Maybe it's going to feel like you're taking that relationship a little bit deeper than perhaps you've gone before. But I think the benefit of having people around you that offer the right support, the right level of honesty, the right level of soundboarding, whatever it is that you need, it's worth having uncomfortable conversations to get to that. It really is. And like I say, start small. It's not about rounding up 10 people, just one honest conversation. And think about who do you already go to? And how could you deepen that relationship and deepen it even more into giving you what you need and you giving them what they need? I'm willing to bet that if you talk to them about the concept of a support circle, I'm willing to bet that they would be, oh my goodness, never thought of having it made to feel a little bit more of a thing like that, but I like it. How could you do that? And then maybe they have someone that they would love to introduce to you because they know that is also someone that shares both your values and, would form a great little triangle with each person bringing something different into the circle. Be the one who goes first. If you want a circle that's built on that level of generosity, you have to be the generous person first. And you have to risk it not being reciprocated. But that's okay. Try. And you will know when you have the right people, when you are comfortable in saying, yeah, that is my support circle. Those are my people that when I need to go to them, I know that I would go to that person for that thing. I would go to that person for that other thing. And be patient. It may not happen straight away. But I think if you start now, it's going to make all the difference in the world when you are wrestling with that feeling of entrepreneurial loneliness and feeling like, you know what? I either have something here that I'm struggling with and I would just love a listener to be able to talk this through with. And your support circle can consist of lots of different people. A coach might be a perfect person to have inside your support circle. Of course, I'm going to say that, right? I think I am inside a few people's support circle because I'm their coach. But also there are other people. My support circle is not just coaches. It's friends who share my values and also get what I'm doing. It's people who are founders of businesses that are nothing like mine, but they have the same outlook as me. They feel the same. They celebrate the same things. And I just want to wrap up by saying, I don't think this is a nice to have. I don't think this is like a little soft add-on to like the strategic part of building a business. I think from a soul perspective, this is structural. This is really needed. When you have this inner circle of support, you do make decisions easier. That talking things through overall doesn't add time. It reduces the time taken. Because what adds the time is sitting alone with something and wrestling with a decision for weeks on end and turning it over and never quite landing on where you need to be with it because you haven't got someone who is processing it with you. So whether it's working with a coach, whether it's reaching out to people who you trained with maybe and saying, you know what, I remember that we really had the same view of things when we were training together. I've been thinking about bringing a circle together around me that is a supportive circle, and I want to be that supportive person for someone else. What do you think? Is it worth a conversation? Or it's simply bringing a little bit more structure to the circle of women or men that you already have around you. But it's not a nice to have. We don't have to do this business building thing alone. Even if you can. Even if you are the most capable person in the world, you don't have to do it alone. It's much more enjoyable. It's much better for your nervous system. It's much more spacious, actually, to have people around you that you trust and that can hold space for your thinking time, your processing of difficult things, your celebrating of great things. So I'd love you to have a go at writing that list, those 2 columns. What do you need and what would you offer? I think it's a really good exercise to do. And then think about the people already around you. Who are your inner circle at the moment? And how could you just check in and make sure that your understanding of what they need from you and their understanding of what you need from them is congruent? Could you do that? Building a business is a bloody big deal, right? It's not always easy, but it doesn't have to be lonely. I think that's the key thing. If, of course, you would like to come and join my inner circle, certainly I would count everyone inside the Wild Way, my community for women founders. I would love you to come and check it out. Go to jillmokes.com/Wild Way. And yeah, have a look and see if it appeals to you. If it does, come and join us. We meet every new moon and full moon, where we get in a rhythm of setting intentions and then reflecting and releasing what's no longer serving us. And we do that in that beautiful moon rhythm. Okay, I've enjoyed recording this episode. This feels like it's been an important one to share. If you do enjoy the podcast, I would be so grateful if you would leave a 5-star review. It just helps so much to get the podcast in front of more listeners. Thank you so much for being here again. I will see you back here, same time, same place next week. Bye for now.